What's up, gamers? Dreamcastguy here, and this is Does It Suck, the show where we take a deep dive look at a new game and see what's good or bad about it. Today we're going to be talking about the Back 4 Blood beta, mostly because I'm a gigantic fan of Left 4 Dead, and this game is pretty much just Left 4 Dead 3. This is created by the same developers, and while it is a new project that has a lot of new ideas, it's also a lot of what made the original games just so fun in the first place. Now, I'm going into this as skeptical as possible, because in 2021 we got Balan Wonderworld, which is a game that was made by the creator of Sonic. So now basically, even if somebody did make something great in the past, I try and just temper my expectations. But even going in this with a minimum amount of excitement, Back 4 Blood has completely blown me away. Like, this is just something that surpasses anything you could have expected. The graphics are great, the freaking new monsters are so freaking fun, and the card system, I think that's the most inventive new technique on a horror game I've seen in a very long time. But let's begin at the start, which is, what is Back 4 Blood? What we have here today is a 4-player co-op shooter that allows you and your friends to buckle up and fight through some very long and very intense campaigns that have you blasting monsters, scooping up ammo, and dealing with some very randomized encounters. There are these different main story chunks that take you to places like harbors or boats, or just way inland up into these hills and broken highways of a very destroyed America. But the point of it is that basically this is way after a zombie apocalypse. The undead have completely swept the nation, and we're playing as the last of the survivors. Now, our people are called the Cleaners, and that's exactly what you're going to be doing. By just unleashing just salvos of ammunition, it's your job to clean up these very destroyed streets. But the part of this that makes it the most fun is that things are very randomized. The monsters that show up, the super beasts that can appear, and the weapons that pop up on the map randomly. So every time you play it, things are 100% different. Even if you are trying to go to the same safe room and going through generally the same environments, the experience shifts and changes. So you can't just memorize where stuff is at, you actually have to be good at the game itself. But this brings me to the deck system, and I am so freaking in love with this. So there are these cards in the game that can be purchased by just doing well. You get like experience points, and you can go to a shop and purchase these different bonuses. Now, the cards can be things like extra health, an ability to carry more ammunition, an ability to make it where if you pick up somebody or heal somebody, you get a portion of their health, like all sorts of different tiny things that make it where you are just stronger in general. But part of the reason I like this card system is that sometimes there are negative cards as well. Sometimes when you finish a map, it'll say, all right, it's time for the next campaign. What bonus card do you want? Like, at one point, I got something that made it where the next mission, I had to choose between stronger zombies or putting a heavy fog over the entire map. Now, not only is this extra spooky, but it really hurts your visibility. There are some very strong special elites that were hidden out there that could do some crazy stuff, and I was not able to see them coming. These twists of making it so you can't just adapt, making it where you have to constantly just be on your toes, doing callouts, and ready for the worst case scenario is so freaking fun. But I want to talk a bit more about these extra new monsters. Because this is based on Left 4 Dead, the special infected, which are like the bigger monsters, they're kind of the same as things we've seen before. There's like a guy who spits acid and can explode with this goo that draws in a bunch of the weaker zombies. There's a guy who can like shoot bullets from really far away. It's like a sniper infected, or even somebody that has one gigantic arm and can grab a singular player and hold them in place, and his teammates have to rescue him. Now, these monsters are all pretty dang cool, but let's just face facts, this is a bit of a retread. We haven't seen anything that's like crazy inventive and new yet, but that's part of why I'm excited about this, is that Back 4 Blood, this is still just a beta. This is clearly just an early test. I did play the alpha as well, and this beta is already a gigantic improvement over those earlier tests. Like, one of the things is this huge mega beast that shows up at one point, and you have to fight him in a tunnel. This is epic, and it makes me excited for the idea of just how freaking unruly these monsters are going to be. Speaking on the special infected though, let's just talk a bit about versus multiplayer. So I think that one of the major appeals, of course, of Left 4 Dead and now Back 4 Blood is the co-op aspects, the idea of you and a bunch of friends working together to survive the impossible. But one of the things that kind of kept the community alive the longest for the original Left 4 Dead games was the versus mode, which basically allowed half the team to play as monsters and half the people playing as survivors. Well, this works a lot better in Back 4 Blood. The way it works is that there is this tiny like box map that has some hiding spots, it's got some buildings, and most importantly, it's got some great vantage points for the monsters to try and sneak up. Now, when you're playing as a monster, you get to choose your class of infected, whether it be a hunter or somebody that's just going to try and drop chemicals on the ground to boil the survivors. And by dealing damage, you actually get upgrade points, so you can not only just continually make monsters, but the things you play best can get stronger by your playing well. And of course, as the survivor, it's your job to try and set up traps, put down razor wire, or sometimes just cower in a corner with the heaviest rifle you can possibly carry. And that's what's kind of just thrilling about this, is that now it's much more timer based. The survivors just have to hold out. They don't necessarily need to kill every single infected, but it feels very, very, very brutal in such an exciting way. Like, I enjoyed playing as the infected because I think it's cool to actually see how these monsters operate and climbing up buildings and stuff, but even when I was just doing round after round as the survivors, I was still having a blast trying to figure out how I could outsmart these terrible creatures that are just coming for our blood. Or I guess I should say, coming back for our blood. Okay, enough with the bad jokes. Now, the last thing I want to touch on is definitely the weapons themselves, because this is definitely the biggest improvement over the original games. The old school Left 4 Dead games, as much as I love them, the guns felt like super soakers at times. They felt like these little cartoonish pea shooters. They're certainly trying to go for a bit more of a realistic feel to this, and certainly a much more realistic look. The arsenal we have access to, just even in this beta itself, is actually surprisingly large, giving us multiple kinds of shotguns, rifles, big pistols, machetes, baseball bats with nails in it, like tons of different melee, ranged, and small-armed weaponry. But what actually blew me away the most is the very cool upgrade system. So as you're playing through this, you can find random attachments, scopes, extended clips, things that let you actually tinker and tailor your particular guns to be your style. But there's also this currency that's just randomly across the map. If you find copper, when you go to these safe rooms, there's actually a shop inside, so you can buy the upgrades you like the most. And there's also this like gun rarity system, so things can have higher stats. You can get epic or legendary loot, which is very, very exciting. It feels good to just barely survive a map, spend all of your copper on healing kits to try and patch yourself up, and then you suddenly find a legendary freaking sniper rifle. It feels so great to slap a scope on the gun you've already been kicking butt with and then better defend your friends with it. It also makes it where there's this great seeking of new loot feeling that the classic games didn't have. Like every time I picked up a shotgun back in the original Left 4 Dead, I know what I'm getting. I understand the damage, I understand how much range it's got. Now everything feels truly randomized. I truly felt like I needed to play at my absolute best at all times, or we were going to die a terrible, terrible demise. If I had any critiques of this so far, I do think that some of the sound effects are still very, very screwed up. I think that there is just some hollowness to the combat that I wish was a little bit more fleshed out, and obviously since this is a beta, I think that's probably going to get resolved. I also feel like some fire effects are really screwed up. Like there were clearly times where I was shooting like explosive barrels or throwing Molotov cocktails and stuff, and it would just do this tiniest little flicker of light. Like it just seems not only unrealistic, but not as satisfying because it doesn't have that humongous blaze of glory as I'm igniting half the map or whatever. I think this is good so far. I'm kind of curious how it's going to balance out in the final game. I'm personally most excited to see this card system in its more advanced format, because right now everything is pretty limited. You'd only have like this couple cards and stuff, and after a couple hours of play, it was cool to see the ins and outs, the strongs and the weaks, but I want to see more of like advanced epic epic cards. I really just want to see exactly how strong I can make my character and how beefy these bad guys can get. But these have just been some off-the-cuff thoughts about the Back 4 Blood beta. Now all of this is recorded on the PlayStation 5. There is actually some haptic feedback triggers. Different weapons feel different, which is a very cool touch. And I also played this a bit on PC. I decided to get into the beta on 2 different platforms. And so far, I'm liking it a bit more on the PlayStation 5 because I'm a console gamer. This does have full crossplay, so it's cool to be able to jump into matches with all sorts of different people. And no matter what, I'm definitely excited for the full release now. Hopefully, it is as epic as this tiny taste has been. But what do you think? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all, and keep dreaming. Oh boy, man, I cannot believe we're finally getting Left 4 Dead 3 in 2021. What a freaking day to be alive. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.